Let's start off with public speakers. Are there any public speakers this morning?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 6 members of the public registered to speak today.
Excellent. Let's go.
For our public speakers, whom I'd like to remind you have, in the interest of time and fairness to all, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware of the clock in the front of the room and the warning light you'll see reminding you that you have 30 seconds left to conclude your remarks. The first speaker is Jason Pinheiro, followed by Yuki Endo.
Good morning, Andy Byford, and good morning, Sarah. I told you guys I was going to come today. I didn't fail. Andy, you know that you're an asset for New York City Transit. You are the one that's put New York City Transit up to date. Please don't leave us because we need you now than before. Because if you leave us, the system will collapse. And then we'll see the 70s and 80s, decades that we don't want to see again. So I want to appreciate you, Andy, for all your efforts that you have done. And you know that you have all of my support from top to bottom. That will be your legacy from now on. And I want to make a small commentary for Sarah Feinberg and Veronica Vanderpool. Thank you for sending me those messages of recovery when I was in the hospital this past Thursday night. That was so encouraging for you girls, and you could count on my support like always. So let's keep it moving.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Yuki Endo, followed by Bradley Brashears.
Nani is you cannot listen of the Jackson High Queens and as for all the bus network design. Last Thursday at the September Attorney Center, 9:30 p.m. SIN1C never show up, and then I had to take at 10 p.m. a bus home, and then at the LaGuardia Airport, and then Port Authority, New York, New Jersey, PD need to enforce the NTA bus enforcement at the LaGuardia Airport, and then because people is blocking the NTA bus stop every day. And then I am also asking the NTA to come back to the Nassau County. And I thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bradley Brashears, followed by Sheila Benesh.
Good morning, board members. I'm Bradley Brashears, representing the New York City Transit Riders Council, and I'm here today to call for crucial bus preparations for the arrival of congestion pricing. Before London implemented its congestion pricing scheme in 2003, the city prepared its transit system to ensure attractive bus alternatives to driving. Over the course of 3 years, London added 300 buses to its fleet, introduced new routes, and increased frequencies on existing routes by adding dedicated bus lanes. As a result, bus service into the congestion zone increased by 27%, and ridership increased by 37%, most of whom switched from driving. Meanwhile, here we are heading into the last quarter of 2019, with a congestion pricing program expected to begin in 2021, less than 2 years away. City bus speeds remain some of the slowest in the country, averaging at just 8 miles per hour. However, we are hopeful with two important demonstration projects underway. First is Manhattan's M15 bus lane camera program, which has captured over 1,500 vehicles blocking bus lanes over a 10-day period. The second is the 14th Street Busway project, which has increased the route's ridership by 17%, while reducing travel times by as much as 30%, saving riders over 5 minutes between 3rd and 8th Avenues. The city's capital budget contains partial funding for a 2-mile protected bus lane pilot to begin in 2019. We would like to know where this project stands. It holds great opportunity within the bus redesign context. At the same time, the possibility of service cuts in the transition to congestion pricing is counterproductive to its success. An aggressive bus service program must complement the bus redesigns and incorporate dedicated bus lanes, transit signal priority, and expanded bus lane camera enforcement. Our city buses must get well above that 8-mile-per-hour average if we want to get people out of their cars and onto our system. Otherwise, congestion pricing will be a tough pill to swallow. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sheila Benesh, followed by Murray Bowden.
Good morning. My name is Sheila Benesh, and I am speaking on behalf of the New York City Transit Writers Council. The new animated subway ads demonstrate the success of modifying signals for faster rides, and we commend the Save Seconds program for this. Yet a remaining cause for delays is the inefficiency of adjacent flagging practices. Flaggers protect track workers from passing trains by stopping them until workers are safely out of the way. In 2007, after a series of deaths, an adjacent track flagging rule was put into effect to protect workers next to active tracks. We believe worker safety is absolutely paramount and that there may be ways to mitigate the negative operational effects of adjacent track flagging. 17 months ago, the MTA Board approved 2,000 feet of a magnetic safety barrier system. Initial reviews from the safety technology workforce demonstration mentioned in the procurement were favorable. We are eager to hear a program review on the benefits of their use. Will the barriers be widely implemented? Increasing the use of track barriers, which physically separates workers from adjacent trains, allows trains to safely move at full speed, reducing travel times. They can also increase worker productivity, reduce the opportunity for human error, and improve worker safety. Such productivity improvements can cut maintenance and capital project costs that rely on track access, like signal modernization. When combined with increased service system capacity, these savings could be reinvested in increased service, creating a virtuous cycle of reinvestment. These physical barriers can be a win-win for workers, riders, and the agency. As threats for service cuts and budget deficits loom, it is ever more important to improve service for riders, streamline work processes, and cut costs. We believe this committee would benefit from a barrier implementation update. Thank you.
The next speaker is Murray Bowden, followed by Kevin Zhang.
Stand down a little box here so I can see you better. First time the box came, maybe 15, 18 years ago, when my year-old grandson came here and spoke at the MTA Board meeting. They brought a box up for him. And he asked that there be a train station at Yankee Stadium. That was the first time it was mentioned. There is a Yankee Stadium. He's 23. He was in Florida. He's coming home next week. Back here, he doesn't like Florida. He made a mistake. He went to a job that he thought was right for him. It wasn't. He learned from it. He's got another job in New York. And he's going forward. What's change? Making a mistake is fine if you learn from it. He learned from it. They changed 14th Street. They changed it. And the people who live in the area, very pleased with it. They can walk their children to the playground. I've read about that stuff. Surprise, surprise. My generation is finished. We don't understand what my grandchildren need to understand, what your grandchildren need to understand. We have to get off the stage. Andy's doing a marvelous job. I was going to tell you the 14 or 800 things that, when you go home, go watch the broadcast of this meeting today. They've changed it. They put the people who are speaking over on the side. They put the other stuff there. They've moved the words at the bottom, and they're better and they're correct. Change is here. The young people know how to do it. People my age have to get off the stage. My time's over, and so is everybody else my age.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kevin Zhang, followed by our final speaker, Melissa Gordon.
Hello, good morning to Sarah Finbert and Andy Byford. I want to mention about 14th Street Busway since it has been running already on Thursday, October 3rd, 2019. Cars, bicycle, and taxi are banned left turns along 14th Street, but it needs to turn right during the busway. It's great to install busway and make it faster by selecting bus corridors in the future, including 14th Street, downtown Brooklyn, Woodhaven Boulevard in Queens, 42nd Street, and 34th Street in Manhattan. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Melissa Gordon.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa Gordon, and I'm currently a Brooklyn resident and MTA rider. On the MTA website, the B46 is ranked the third highest in ridership in all of New York City, servicing over 38,100 rides per weekday, equaling over 9.9 million rides per year. It seems odd to target such a vital route. The B46 is considered a lifeline route, one that WNYC noted houses a large number of healthcare workers, a working class workforce well known for traveling long distances, not to mention the job titles that go unpaid like mother, father, student, and community member. The MTA's Financial Outlook report for 2019 states that fares have risen higher than the rate of inflation from 2007 to 2017. While there wasn't as much data for bus performance, the subway on-time performance dropped from almost 90% in 2010 to under 65% in 2017. So fares go up and service declines. The report also notes, although never makes the connection based on the data just mentioned, that ridership has also dropped. In 2016, the select bus service and dedicated lanes for the B46 were introduced. Why would the MTA then cut service and sabotage such improvements? These tactics are reminiscent of an age-old 20th century strategy to ignite skepticism within transit users, which results in a spiraling effect of less ridership, less fare income, and continued cuts. I assume you are all very well versed in this history, or I hope you are. It is also well documented that service cuts overwhelmingly affects the working class and POC communities who have long commutes. Upon relocating to Brooklyn, one of the most striking observations in my commute was the difficulty getting north to south in Brooklyn. Aside from the G line, all trains funnel into Manhattan, and none connect us within the outer boroughs. That said, the B46 high efficiency during the weekdays was a relief. It did not excuse the 45-minute wait times in the evenings after my workday was over. There's a lot more to be said. I hope you guys will all consider not cutting the B46.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that concludes the public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to start the meeting today by congratulating everyone who worked on the 14th Street busway. I live in that neighborhood, and so I'm seeing firsthand the improvements to the neighborhood, to quality of life issues there, and I'm just grateful for it. So congratulations to everyone who worked on that, and Craig in particular to you, and congratulations also on getting the outward-facing cameras up and running on the buses to capture the bus lane violations. Appreciate that. So Randy, did you want to?
Yeah, I have one comment. Oops, sorry. I finally got a chance to ride last Friday afternoon, and I was very pleased with it. I spoke with several of the drivers, and their one complaint was 7 o'clock when the agents disappear. People, it's like open season. People are in front of them on the streets, making turns, and there's no enforcement after 7 o'clock. Otherwise, it works well.
Not that I have noticed, but that's good to know that some folks are out there, or that some folks are concerned about it. Craig?
No, just to remind, the M14 will be one of the next routes that we're putting on the automated bus lane enforcement cameras on, so that should help.
Okay, the only other thing I wanted to say is welcome back, Sarah Meyer. You look great. Congratulations. Can't wait to see photos of that baby.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Can I get a motion and a vote to approve the minutes from the September Transit Committee meeting? Moved. Second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Are there any changes to the work plan?
No, there are no changes.
Thanks, Jai. President Byford?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We all looked around for Tim Mulligan there, and I would like to say, Chair, what a great job Tim did in many years for working for us at Transit, and good luck to him in his new role in Jano's group. So he'll be sorely missed. Chair, lots going on. Obviously, you've got my report before you. I'm just going to paraphrase a few things and also pick up on some items that you covered in the last meeting, and so there were a couple of points made in the minutes. So last time you expressed concern about the cost of elevator installations, so we will be showing a video today, or at least I think that's the plan, Alex. We're going to show the video, right? Okay, so that will explain that the cost isn't just for one elevator. There's a lot of factors, but obviously we're determined to drive that down. You also, at the last meeting, expressed desire to see buses fitted with cameras to tackle bus lane violations. And again, and it's great that you acknowledged the work done on 15th Street. Again, we've got another video on that showing how the system works so that everyone sees how the system works, following the recent launch with DOT on 15th Street. And so that plus the work on 14th Street, I would like to do a big shout out to our partners at NYPD, but also at the Department of Transportation. My good friend and colleague, Commissioner Polly Trottenberg, and her team deserve huge credit. Just some highlights from the commentary. I made reference last time, or since the last meeting rather, I make reference in my commentary about the capital plan. It's fantastic. 6 lines will now proceed for modern re-signaling, CBTC, communications-based train control. And it's good. I'm very pleased to say that Pete Tomlin, my VP of re-signaling, will lead that work. Also, the fact that we will now have not just 50 but 70 stations made accessible, so all the more reason to cut that cost. And again, we'll come back to that point. In terms of day-to-day performance, well, the credit is due to my team. I have a fabulous team. I've built a great executive team. It's their credit, not mine. And also the 50,000 men and women of transit. They're the ones who are doing the work. But just some highlights for the subway. You'll hear from Sally. Another period of more than 80% on-time performance with our continued focus on speeds and finishing off the subway action plan. But continued focus on speeds, and the speed team that we put together continues to identify wrongly calibrated signals, continues to take out unnecessary speed restrictions, and we're continuing to see improved run times on every line. And don't forget, folks, that is a program that has involved our union partner from the start. What else? Buses, we've talked about 14th Street. I've asked Craig to really focus on root cause. You already were, but we'd like to have a save seconds type campaign on buses. So Craig's got some good news to talk about on that, particularly where we've been focusing on the off-peak when traffic's not so much of an issue. We've been doing lots of work on paratrans and accessibility. A real highlight for me last week was the station accessibility lab that we launched at J Street Metro Tech. And I won't steal Alex's thunder, he's going to talk about that. So it's a very busy time, but by focusing on basics and priorities, we are improving customer service, and that's what it's all about. And the good news is, as you'll hear from Sarah, as customers are noticing, there's been a 13% increase in overall satisfaction with subway service, testament to our work to speed up service and to improve customer service at our subway stations through our Group Station Manager program launched last September. And also, riders are coming back to the subway in 2019. Average weekday ridership has increased over the previous year for 7 out of 9 months, or a 4.5% increase over September 18. So that's signs, really positive signs. Those are positive signs. Customers sat and voting with your feet, if you will, people coming back to the subway. So, Chair, I hope these results give you, the committee and the board, assurance that this team knows what it's doing, and given leeway and the means to do it, we will turn this system around. Thank you.
Commissioner Albert?
Thanks, Andy. You know, all of these statistics are really impressive, and we see this out there when we ride, but the one that's amazingly impressive is the 30% reduction in additional train time. That's due to trains that have been sped up, but also moving out of stations on a much more quick basis, and you see the platform controllers doing that, and so people know they have to step in and out rather quickly so the train isn't delayed, and when you add that up station by station, you've really saved a lot of time over a fairly lengthable run, and so congratulations to everyone involved in that. That's very impressive numbers.
Thank you. And again, that's credit to Sally and her team. I always said, and I'll say again, you always needed both things. You needed the subway action plan to stop incidents happening in the first place, but then you needed the operational discipline and the focus on basics that Save Seconds brought, and that was under Sally Labrera's leadership.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Sally for the subway report.
Thank you. That's a good segue into the detail. The Subways team continued to deliver on improved performance in the month of September. This was our 13th consecutive month of meeting our delay reduction targets. Weekday delays were down 40%, compared to last year, and that is the lowest level that they've been since June of 2013. On-time performance reached 82.7%. That compares to 69% 1 year ago. Service delivered was the best since the measurement of this metric began in 2015, and all of our other customer-focused metrics also improved significantly year over year. Weekday major incidents were the lowest since the historical data began in 2015. Of particular note, there was only one major track incident for the month. That compares to a monthly average of 7.6 for the past 12 months. That's major track incidents. And in the 12 months prior to that, the number was 13.2 major track incidents per month. So just one major track incident. Of course, we think that's one too many, but very significant progress there. Similarly, we had the second fewest major signal incidents on any month, for any month on record since we began tracking this statistic. This reflects the better condition of our assets since the Subway Action Plan, prioritization of critical assets for preventative maintenance, and doing a better job of getting to incidents when they occur and resolving them quickly through our enhanced emergency response teams. As we reported for the past several months, actual run times continue to improve. And so, Commissioner Albert, building on your comment for additional train time, the metric that's up on the screen is actual run times September to September. These are peak period run times. So these are end-to-end run times. And what we did is we took the median in September 2019 and compared it to the median in 2018 September. And what you see is all of those blue lines represent, those blue bars represent positive improvement. So that's a reduction in runtime, in actual runtimes on every single line, September of 19 compared to September of 18. The biggest improvement is on the 7 Express, which is running 10% faster this year versus last year. The N line is 5.3% faster. The J line is 4.4% faster. The R line is 3.7% faster, and so on. Our Save Seconds efforts to recalibrate signals and safely update speed limits continue, with speed changes already implemented at 183 locations. We look forward to building on these efforts with the Train Speed and Safety Task Force that Andy mentioned to further improve train speeds where it's safe and feasible to do so. I'd like to talk for just a minute about elevators and escalators. Beginning in March, we began an intensive round of inspections on escalators, integrating new tools that we identified as part of the Subway Action Plan. The inspections were witnessed by an external third party. Because we moved through the system so quickly, leveraging contractors, we had a number of machines out at once for inspections and associated adjustments and repairs following those inspections, and we recognized that that was an inconvenience for our customers. During these inspections, we confirmed the need to incorporate new tools for more precise measurement during inspections, and we identified potential improvements in our maintenance procedures. We've implemented a revised maintenance regimen, which splits up larger, less frequent maintenance programs into more frequent visits to all escalators. In doing so, we're able to visit escalators more frequently, and we're able to improve compliance with preventative maintenance regimens. We've also reviewed relevant codes and are making adjustments to switches that were previously set to overly sensitive levels. Overall availability has steadily improved since March, and September had the highest 24-hour availability in 6 months. Of particular note is the improvement that we're making in reliability. That's the uptime of the machines when you remove the planned work and the inspection time. We see the reliability improving on our machines. We know that we need to do more, but we see this improvement in availability and improvement in reliability as a positive trend, and we see that the enhanced maintenance that we're doing as part of these planned maintenance and enhanced inspections is paying off in terms of reliability. Elevator availability dipped in August and improved in September. We expect this improvement to continue. This was due to a targeted inspection campaign on our traction elevators and several proactive campaigns that we took as a result of some of the results that we found during those inspections. We expect availability to improve, as well as the continued improvement in the overall reliability of both elevators and escalators. In both cases, we are assisted by the recent onboarding of new E&E staff, and I mentioned this at the last meeting. We just graduated a new team of apprentices. Many of them are going into the E&E area. These are folks that graduated from technical high schools and came to work in our apprentice program 3 years ago. We've also recently onboarded new classes of helpers that are paired with more seasoned maintainers and are able to get to machines more frequently, and we're also able to get to machines more frequently when there's some sort of an outage. So together we think this multifaceted approach of improving the overall performance, reliability, and availability of the escalators and elevators is paying off. We know that we have more to do. We see the progress to date, and we know that it will continue.
Okay, thanks, Sally. So when you say that some of the escalators were set to be, the code was set to be too sensitive, what you're referring to is, so I'm riding an escalator, I drop my sweater gets stuck, and the whole thing shuts down. But maybe that's how it's supposed to work. Can you go into too
Sure.
sensitive?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
So in particular, we've been looking at the comb impact switches. That the comb plates are on the tops and the bottoms of the escalators, and they are set to trigger a stoppage of the machine with a particular pounds per square inch. We've been reviewing our code compliance, and we've been able to identify in cases where we have set that sensitivity to too sensitive a threshold, essentially meaning that the machine would stop before it needed to in terms of pounds per square inch. It could be just a small kick or a small amount of pressure that wouldn't by code trigger that machine should be out. Of course, when the machine stops, we don't have elevator and escalator maintainers at all locations, so it's out of service until our maintainers can come and do a full inspection. So that takes some time, and we want to remove those unnecessary stoppages to the greatest extent possible. So we are carefully reviewing those thresholds machine by machine and making the appropriate calibrations as we go.
Okay, and that's helpful. And so when an escalator goes out of service, and I guess I have the same question for elevators too, what's the average amount of time it takes to get someone there on the scene to sort it out?
I don't have a single number right now. I could calculate that, but the truth is that it very much varies based on where in the system it is, what time of day it is, and what day of week. We do have elevator and escalator maintainers stationed throughout the system at known problematic locations, known heavy locations, and known locations where there's a particular reliance on escalators for station flow. But I don't have the single number here for you. I can get that for you.
Okay, Commissioner Albert.
Thank you, Chair. A follow-up question to Sarah's question. When an elevator or escalator goes out of service, is an electronic signal sent to somebody so you're immediately aware?
Yes, we have a remote monitoring system called LiftNet, and that is how we get the remote notification of outages. We don't consistently have that capability on every machine in the system, but we do have a regimen of regular inspections by station staff to make sure that we are ensuring our elevator and escalator staff as quickly as possible of any outages that they're not being notified of through the system.
And the ones that are not yet hooked up to that system, will they be?
We're working on some different technology applications to advance those efforts. Some of it is more of a networking issue, and we're working through the capital program to do that. And some of it, but there are opportunities to add technology, to add sensors and things like that, and we're exploring a number of those options now.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Sally? Yep, Commissioner Vanderpool.
So there's been such steady progress that you all have reported over the many months, and I congratulate you all for that. Are we still under the emergency order? So okay, so it seems like we don't know if we're still under it.
I'll take the action to come back to you. I actually don't know. I know it was being regularly renewed. I have not heard that recently, so I'll come back to you once I've checked with the chair. Does anyone
I think
know?
there are folks who have the answer.
It
Go
was
ahead.
recently
Yes.
reviewed,
Yes.
or renewed. Okay.
I think it's certainly interesting that we've seen steady progress, at least at this point. We know that the progress is not one-shot progress. We've seen it steadily over many, many months. So it'd be interesting to know why we continue, or why it is continued to be renewed. My second and last question is related to the Subway Action Plan accomplishments, that timetable, or that table rather, on page 54. So there's very clear metrics of progress, again, being shown for each of these goals and metrics and milestones, except for the teams. So in each of the categories, there's a goal to add specialized teams, for example, for track or for emergency car response teams. And we're seeing that the progress there is just ongoing. So I'd just like to know if we are truly moving forward on accomplishing some of these milestones, such as adding 16 specialized multidisciplinary teams. And if so, do we have them? How many teams do we have? It just seems a bit disconnected from the very specific numbers we have for some of the other goals, but not for the team goals.
Sure, we can review the chart that's in the book to see if maybe we want to add some different types of measures for those teams. But yes, the progress is that we are keeping the teams staffed, and what we are doing is we are tracking the overall performance with respect to our ability to respond and clear incidents faster for those teams. So specifically for the CAT teams, for the EMTs, we are looking at what is the response. What was the response prior to having those additional resources in place to get to incidents? What was the response to clear, or time to clear an incident? And then we've been tracking that since adding those additional resources, and actually setting ourselves increasingly more and more difficult targets with respect to those same resources. So even with the same number of augmented resources, we're looking for constant improvement, and we're setting goals. Setting goals that reflect that.
One quick question. I'm pleased with all those positive results, but one complaint I got from a friend who's older, he and his wife had difficulty at Grand Central. You addressed part of it, but why did we have to take the escalators and the elevator out at the same time at Grand Central Terminal, from the Grand Central to the Grand Central subway station?
One of the elevators just went out and needs a significant overhaul, and it's a piece of work that was not contracted for, that had to be done on a quasi-emergency basis and added to one of the other contracts. The other escalators were planned to be out as part of this. There's a multifaceted redo of the Grand Central mezzanine that is moving forward. It's multiple projects, not just because fragmented procurement, it's really in part because as a result of the East Midtown rezoning, you're getting investment from different development projects. We're trying to bring that all into a more coherent, singular sequence, but those escalators need to be taken out. I think one positive is that we have managed, I think, with some increased customer communications about alternate routing. I think we've managed the impact of both of the escalators and the elevators going out effectively, and it's being very closely monitored in tandem with the transit folks on a day-to-day basis. It's a very heavy load. That obviously, there's over 400,000 people a day using that station.
Wait, so can Sally or Andy, can someone walk through exactly what we're doing to manage that? Because I actually did not realize that elevators and escalators were out at Grand Central at the same time, which is significant.
So we've stationed wayfinders in the fare control area that's most affected by the escalator and the elevator outage. That's also the area where there was recently the stair work, which was done on an accelerated basis and in a sequence to give some circulation options in that fare control area. We have a lot of signage up in the station. Actually, just before this meeting, Alex and I were talking about adding the floor decals for wayfinding that we have that he's going to talk about with respect to the J Street Accessibility Lab to that station as well. And we've been certainly marketing, through our digital platforms, the work that's going on at the station and the options that folks have.
Yeah, and I just want to add one quick thing. Not all the elevators are out at Grand Central. There's the ones going to the 4-5 and the 6 are still running, and then there was 2 street elevators that run at Grand Central. One near Park and 42nd, one near Lex and 42nd. The Park and 42nd one, which is one of the oldest elevators in the system, if I'm right, is out and was taken out. But at the same time, the one on Lexington and 42nd did open. So there is a way to get out. Again, it's a matter of us communicating this properly. But I've used Grand Central, 4 times in the last week, so it's still working. But again, not on the 7, as we said.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Sally? Okay, great. I'd like to recognize Craig for the bus and peer transit report.
Thank you, Chair. So today I'd like to spend the majority of my time sharing some of the exciting initiatives and some recent performance we see on the bus system. But before we do, we just have a few quick updates on both the bus and the paratransit side. So we recently updated the bus and the paratransit dashboard, and it's available online for greater transparency and customer focus. So on the bus side, we're now reporting at a route level for both peak and off-peak during the weekdays. On the paratransit side, we've implemented a host of new metrics, one of them being what we're calling a customer experience metric, another one being, as requested by Chair Feinberg, on-time performance goal for pickups at the 15-minute level. So both of those you'll see online. In November, we launched enhanced broker service in the paratransit for our paratransit customers in Staten Island. So those customers can now book a trip via the My AAR app. They'll have access to an increasing capacity of wheelchair accessible vehicles as well as door-to-door service. We also recently launched the Brooklyn bus network redesign. So I'll urge our customers to go online and take those surveys as well as to visit us at our open houses coming up soon. And so while we're doing this, as Andy said, we're really focusing on current bus service along with our partners at DOT and NYPD. And we'd like to share with you what we see, some of these new initiatives and the results. So as mentioned, recently we launched the 14th Street Transit and Truck Priority. And it's really been what I'll characterize, although the Yankees just lost, as a home run for our 14th Street bus customers, all 30,000 bus customers. So we see travel time improvements ranging from 22 to 36%. On average, across the day, you see the chart on your left, average travel times have decreased by 34% in the eastbound and 31% in the westbound. Similarly, on speeds, we see ranges between 28 and 56%, depending on time of day and direction. And there you see average speeds anywhere from 51% to 46%, depending on direction. So looking ahead, what we're doing is we're working on taking a look at the new realities on 14th Street and then feeding that back into our schedules. Ooh. Wasn't good? Oh. So in case you haven't seen it, this is what the new 14th Street busway looks like. So the busway is in effect 7 days a week from 6A to 10P. Only buses, trucks, and emergency vehicles can traverse the busway. All other vehicles have to make their first right turn. Sorry about that. Okay, so since last year, we've seen increased ridership on the M14, which is really exciting. So we've seen on average weekday, our ridership has increased from 26 to 31,000. And similarly, on Saturday and Sunday, we've seen increases of 40% and 34% respectively. We recognize that some of this ridership for sure is a result of the L-line work that's happening, but we're really excited that customers have chosen the buses as their alternative mode. And given the increase in speeds and decrease in travel times, we're hopeful that these customers will stay with us as we look ahead. What we really want to do is take those lessons learned from 14th Street and put them across the whole bus system. Here we wanted to share some recent bus lane implementations and some of the results we've seen. As you can see on the BX6, customers are enjoying travel times down between 8 and 14%. B25, 26 in Brooklyn, travel times down between 13 and 21%. The B82 also in Brooklyn, travel times down 12 to 17%. And the Q58 with travel times down between 40 and 45%. When you take a look at these 4 or 5 routes here, we're affecting nearly 100,000 customers are experiencing better journey times. The picture on your left there is actually the M15, where similarly we've seen decreased travel times and improved ridership. Customers are coming back to the M15. The M15 now will have well-enforced bus lanes, transit signal priority, as well as all-door boarding. So it has all, many of the tools we can use, and we're excited to see customers coming back to the M15. One other point here I want to say is that bus lanes don't always not only improve the buses or the exact routes that travel along those bus lanes, but there's other routes that use these bus lanes as well. And when you take a look at those other routes, that accounts for another 50,000 more customers each and every weekday that are experiencing better travel times because of these bus routes. So yes, bus lanes are crucial, but well-enforced bus lanes is what we need. And we have a really robust partnership with our partners at NYPD. We have a program where NYPD is targeting 16 priority corridors that we share with them. These 16 corridors account for 750,000 daily customers across 85 routes. Here are some latest statistics. The NYPD has issued almost 300,000 bus lane and bus stop parking violations. Similarly, they've towed approximately 5,000 vehicles out of the bus stop and the bus lanes year to date. We also have a joint initiative where our road operation folks goes out with NYPD through enforcement rides. An example of this is in the month of September, we did nearly 50 of these type of enforcement rides across the month, across the city. So across New York City, we currently have 139 miles of bus lanes. As you see on the left, the bar chart shows where these bus lanes are located. The bar on the right shows different types of bus lane treatments. We have busways, as we spoke about on 14th Street. We have center running bus lanes. An example of this would be on the BX6 up in the Bronx. We have both offset and curbside bus lanes, and we have HOV type lanes, which would, example would be Staten Island Express across the Gowanus and into Staten Island. What's really a dramatic piece here is that half of our weekday trips today, half of our 54,000 weekday trips travel along these bus lanes. So the key would be to continue to work hard on getting these bus lanes well enforced, and we really think we can make a concerted effort at improving our bus customers' journeys each and every day. One last point is the New York City Department of Transportation has committed to 10 to 15 more miles of bus lanes each and every year. Another tool in our toolbox is transit signal priority. We currently have active over 700 intersections across 14 routes, and there are 200,000 weekday customers that benefit from transit signal priority. On average, we see transit signal priority improving bus speeds about 14%. I should say travel times, improving travel times about 14% over those segments. One recent implementation was on the M15, where we implemented 100 traffic intersections above 72nd Street. And DOT has committed to another 300 intersections per year. As Andy mentioned, he's really tasked us to take a closer look, focus on the root causes, go corridor by corridor, and take a keen look on the pinch points to see what we can do from a service management perspective to improve customers' travel times. So we've really been taking a close look on our terminal performance. We know that buses that get out of the terminal on time tend to stay on time across the route. Here you see some recent performance improvements on the overnight hours. This is between 12 and 6 a.m., where about 80,000 of our customers use the bus system. You see that currently there's over 200 of the 276 routes which operate on the overnight now experience a weight assessment above 90%, which means that 9 out of every 10 buses on average come within 5 minutes of that schedule. Okay, you could compare that to our average weekday, which reports somewhere in the neighborhood of 78% or so. So we're really excited about this. We're going to continue to focus on the overnight where traffic is not as big of a challenge for the bus system. So this is an update on the 15 to 19 plan as we move out, we're a new bus fleet with more and more customer amenities. We currently have 2,500 buses with digital screens, and you see many of the other features that our buses have. We also want to reaffirm our commitment to a 2040 all-electric bus fleet, and we're working hard to get there. So as you've seen, our customers are already benefiting from many of the initiatives we've been implementing. But looking ahead, there's more to come. With the full implementation of Omni, we've made a commitment to all-door boarding. The current plan is to have all buses equipped with Omni by the end of next year. We're excited about our new automated bus lane enforcement system so that we can enforce our right-of-ways. The proposed capital plan has $85 million proposed for that project. We continue to move forward with our transit signal priority. Our zero-emission state-of-the-art fleet, again, the next capital plan proposes to have 500 of the 2,400 buses being replaced to be all-electric buses. And then lastly, our new bus command center and digital radio system will come online with the first borough early next year. So before we go to the video, I just want to thank the hardworking men and women of buses, all 18,000, along with our partners, along with DOT and NYPD, and we're really excited about what the future brings. So now we'd just like to show a short video about the ABLE system. We're here to talk about our ABLE system. ABLE stands for Automated Bus Lane Enforcement, and it gives us the ability to catch bus blockers that are blocking our buses moving along in any bus lane throughout New York City. We're really excited about this new ABLE system and the ability to enforce our bus lanes via onboard cameras. Quite often there are trucks that are stopped in our bus lanes, loading and unloading, taxis loading and unloading, and we know that we have to coexist as a key piece of the transportation ecosystem in New York City, but we really need to move our buses. This allows us to enforce all bus lanes all the time.
The ABLE system works by using two different types of camera systems: static cameras on the street, which are run by the Department of Transportation, and cameras that are mounted on our buses. And in combination, they capture any people that are violating the bus lanes, any vehicles that are parked up in the bus lanes, and that automatically generates violation tickets.
The way that the system works is a bus captures a vehicle in the bus lane. A second bus captures that same vehicle at the same spot in the bus lane for more than 5 minutes. Every bus that captures that vehicle will capture the license plate, the location, and the timestamp. For that same date, time, and same location, you'll be issued a fine for that. If that vehicle then goes a block down the road, blocks our bus stop again, for that longer than a 5-minute period, they'll be issued a second violation. What happens is for the first 60 days, we'll be issuing warnings. After that, we'll be issuing violations. And there's a graduated fine structure, so those that are habitual bus blockers will be getting graduated fines along the way. The whole purpose is not to issue fines and collect money. The purpose is to keep those vehicles out of our bus lane, move our buses faster, and bring our customers back to the bus system. So if you're a driver in New York City, stay out of our bus lanes.
Okay, Okay, that was great. Just 1 second, please. Couple of questions for you, Craig. Why 5 minutes? Why not like 2 minutes or 3 minutes? Why 5?
That's the current city policy around bus standing in a bus lane, because vehicles are allowed to drop off and pick up, but so it's a 5-minute threshold.
So it's a city statute?
I believe so, but I could confirm that. Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to put it down on my list of things to talk to the city about, because
I
let's try
agree.
let's try to move
Right,
that.
5 minutes is a long time. And what is the I'm sorry, what is the violation? $50.
It's 50 for the first, and then it goes up, graduating up to $250 for the fifth in any 12-month period.
Don't we think that's a little too low? I got a
That-
parking ticket in front of my bakery for $115, and I was in there for 3 minutes. It was double parking. I mean, I just think.
That was recently legislated.
Was it through legislation that we set the fine?
Yes, we all believe it's too low and
Right.
would like to see it go up. Craig, another question. So as we are photographing bus lane violators, you and I had a conversation at one point about making sure that we're capturing that data and holding on to it and determining future uses for it, right? So, so one of the things that I'm curious about is, are we making sure that we are tracking the data of city vehicles, state vehicles, our own MTA vehicles, and police vehicles that are sitting in the bus lane?
Yes, we're not currently doing it now. We've spoken to our vendor, who's putting together some reporting for us, and we look forward to seeing some of that. So that's happening.
Okay, because I think that's really important. So, for example, I know that there's a long-term standing policy that we apparently don't ticket police who are sitting in the bus lane. I understand why that policy is in effect, particularly if they're responding to an emergency. But if they're not responding to an emergency and the lights aren't on, let's figure out, what's going on there. And doesn't mean we have to, and it doesn't mean we have to change our policy immediately and issue tickets, but I think we should at least be gathering the data about, which cars are sitting in the lane, and so that we can feed that data back to whether it's the NYPD or state offices or city offices, so that we know what kind of problem we have on our hands and can address it.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Schwartz?
Just to build on what you just asked, do we know a breakdown when there are violations, whether they're trucks versus New York City taxis versus Uber, Lyft, or right?
Yeah.
Do we have what is the who's the major violator? Is it trucks, delivery trucks?
So
the only reason is based on who are the violators. One is to the extent that we are or not getting the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission involved, because I think one of the enforcement tools could be if you're a violator multiple times, about taking away their license or their medallion or the ability to drive an Uber or a Lyft. That could be a deterrent to get people off. And the other thing is whether you need a change in state law or some other thing. If trucks or delivery vehicles have multiple infractions, I don't know why we don't have like progressive disciplinary, where a delivery vehicle would be confiscated or towed, because I'm just concerned that just fining them, it's just the cost of doing business, and if it's $50, $100, it's sort of like they just build it into the cost of doing business. If the owner of that vehicle lost the vehicle and wasn't on the road for a day, 2 days, 3 days, they may think twice about having multiple infractions. So I'm just trying to think of outside the box, that there may be other incentives or disincentives, depending on how you want to look at it, Greg, about how to reduce people that create multiple violations within the bus lane, especially the delivery vehicles, if they're the major violator of double parking or being in the bus's way.
True. Yeah, your point is well noted. You know, currently the system has been in effect, you know, just for the 2 weeks. So we've been issuing the violations. I think we're up to 2,400 violations in that week and a half or so period. But looking ahead, for sure, we've already engaged the vendor about providing us intelligent reporting. You know, not only, you know, type of vehicle or relation to a fleet, but time of days, geography. You know, we really want to get some, you know, granular data so that we could both engage these large-scale fleets, we could work with NYPD if we do need to, and then potentially, like was said here, potential changes to legislation. So
Right.
that's happening.
Even things like making it a moving violation, even though they're parked and not moving, if there was some way of making it a moving violation, it's points, then it impacts your insurance, right? And potential loss of license. So I'm not trying to, I'm just trying to give you or come up with a menu of ways of creating maybe even more effective deterrents than what already exists to further make progress in changing the culture, the mindset of people who just say, hey, it's not a big deal, and if I get caught, it's $50. It doesn't deter them. So,
Thank you.
Wait, Linda.
Yes, to your point about the 5 minutes, I think in at least one European city, they just won't drop you in a bus lane. It might be London, but I'm not sure. You would probably know, Andy.
Well, funny enough, I was just whispering to the chair about that. Certainly on what's called a red route in London, you do not dare stop. If you stop in a red route, not only is the potential for a fine huge, but to Commissioner Schwartz's point, it escalates. So you can have your vehicle taken to the pound, in which case you're paying a massive fine. So I think I'm confident in saying that we've done what we can for now within the existing enabling legislation. But you know, if we're deadly serious about this, which we are, we do need to make sure that people don't just swallow the cost, or probably more likely pass it on to their customers. You know, we need whatever teeth in this thing that we can get to make it work.
Commissioner Jones.
Along the same lines that Larry was talking about, the issue that rather than focusing only on the individual drivers, FedEx and UPS obviously are corporations that, to a certain extent, demand that their drivers do this to meet their delivery schedules. And the question, has any discussion been held with some of these big sort of delivery operations to try to come up with something that would be, maybe it is massive fines, maybe $5,000 to start and escalate, because the individual driver, he has to make his route. And he knows he passes it on to UPS and those guys, and they take it, they punch him. I don't know if any discussion has been held with these guys.
So I had a conversation with the city about this, actually, because the city apparently also allows FedEx and UPS to combine all of their tickets and then come in quarterly and negotiate what they've decided they would like to pay, which is insane. In my last conversation with the city, there were some folks who seemed surprised by that, and said that it was their intention to go back to FedEx and UPS and take some steps to potentially look at taking some proactive steps to see if that could be addressed. Now, I'm told that policy is in effect for some good reason. I don't know what it is. I can tell you that when I was at the FRA, freight railroads used to try to combine all of their enforcement and come in at the end of the year and tell us what they would like to pay, which blew my mind when I became the FRA administrator, because you should be paying 100%. So anyway, in my most recent conversation, it sounded like the powers that be were motivated to figure out if that was a policy that should continue. But certainly you're exactly right. If they're doing that with parking tickets, which are more expensive than bus lane violations, they'll probably do it with bus lane violations too. So progress.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lynn?
Yeah, this is another obviously very important area, and much like I said in the fare evasion area, I think specificity and data would be tremendously useful to figure out what percentage of our problem is caused by what type of behavior. So how soon do you think we would have documentation. For instance, if it's FedEx, UPS is 60% of our problem, that's a fascinating thing. If it's 2% of our problem, it's a different. But so I think that to the extent that you have data you can share with us, and we can look and see where are the problems, that's where we should be focusing our attention.
Yeah, so I don't have a date on when the data will be available. Like I said, the system was designed to issue violations, so when we went back recently to the vendor and asked them to provide what I term intelligent reporting, like I said, they said they would go back and look at that, but based upon the conversation today, we'll advance those conversations rapidly. Sure.
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you. As I'm thrilled to be a member of the board at this time where buses have been receiving such significant priority in our discussions and our efforts. Many of you know I came from the advocacy community where I spent over a decade talking about these sorts of improvements in buses. So it's great to, for the past several years, be part of seeing these advocacy measures be put into place with such a solid team. The materials have been great, I think, in communication. On Twitter, that video of like the zapping, bus, whatever it was, the video where the bus is zapping the cars was all over Twitter. Everybody loved it. There was a lot of fun around that. It's great to see the public education campaign around the fines. My suggestion would be, given that the state legislature has been a very solid partner in authorizing these cameras, that we continue to keep them, particularly the sponsors of that legislation, Assemblywoman Rosick and Senator Guinardis, apprised of the progress of this, because it's incredibly important that they know that this has indeed made such significant impact after, of course, the 60-day warning period is over. I think it's important for us to continue to keep our legislative partners, again, particularly those two sponsors of the legislation, apprised of this success, because we do want them to know that this is important. We know that they know that, but why it continues to be, because this is legislation that will sunset again. And we want to ensure that we have documented this success from the beginning, not at the very last minute when we're looking for this legislation to be reauthorized.
Anyone else for Craig? I feel like I looked over some. Commissioner Albert, did you have a question? I feel like sorry.
I was just going to affirm what Commissioner Schwartz mentioned, that if these fines are too light, and if the prospect of losing your registration is not also on the table, many of these trucking companies are just going to consider it a cost of doing business and say, we'll pay the fine. So we obviously need something stronger, and that's escalating.
Agreed. Great. Okay, anything else? Craig, thank you so much. Did I cut you off, Craig, or did you finish? You finished, right? Okay, all right, great. Alex, you're up.
Sure. Thank you so much, Chair. I'd like to speak about two things today. One is, as Andy mentioned, our elevators and kind of what we're doing to get ready for the next capital plan, and also the Accessible Station Lab, which we just launched at J Street. So we're in the process of laying the groundwork every day for the 2020-2024 capital plan, which has a historic investment into making 70 stations ADA accessible. As everyone knows, this is going to be a monumental challenge on all fronts. We absolutely have to find new and innovative approaches to do our project management, let alone costs, let alone the quality of the product, let alone dozens of other aspects of these projects. I mean, this is more than 3 times the amount of elevators we've done in a 5-year stretch. So I'm going to ask that we show a quick little video about what it goes into making a station accessible. Then I'll touch a little bit more on some of the approaches we're looking at in terms of achieving our goal, and then we'll talk about J Street.
What does it take to install an elevator in a subway station?
To get on a train at one of our 493 subway stations, you usually have to go down into an underground station or up to an elevated one. At almost all of our stations, this means stairs.
sometimes a lot of them. Because while almost 25% of our stations have elevators, most unfortunately don't. That's because our system is old. New York was one of the first cities in the world to have a subway. Our first stations opened in 1904, and most of the stations we have today were built before 1940. Only a handful of our stations were built after the 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act, which requires elevators in transit stations. The good news is that many stations have elevators currently under construction, and many more are coming as part of the Fast Forward plan to modernize New York City transit. Our goal is in that 5 years, no one will be more than 2 stops away from an accessible station. Because the subway is for all New Yorkers.
You're probably asking yourself, why does it take so long to build elevators? Isn't New York City full of them? Good questions. According to the City Department of Buildings, there's 63,000 passenger elevators in the 5 boroughs. That's a lot of elevators. But the way elevators are built in new buildings is very different from how they are installed in existing subway stations. New buildings, the elevator shafts usually form the core of the building. In other words, the building is literally built around the elevator. But adding an elevator to an 80-year-old subway station is a completely different matter. There's 3 main challenges in adding elevators to a subway station, which we'll call the 3 S's: space, subsurface, and structure. The first challenge is finding space in and around the station where shafts can be built. This is a huge challenge in a dense city where buildings are so close together. Our subway stations sometimes have buildings right up against them, and often even on top of them.
We also usually have to build more than 1 elevator per station. One that takes people from the street to the mezzanine, and then more to get to the platforms. This means having to find space on the street and in the station to fit numerous elevators. And the best places for the elevator to go might not be the sidewalk. It could be in the middle of a roadway or on a property that the MTA doesn't own.
Or it could be in a place where the neighborhood doesn't want a structure built. All of this adds cost, complexity, and time to sort things out with everyone involved. The second challenge is subsurface conditions. What lies beneath? Remember that our first station opened in 1904. Well, the city has grown a lot since then, and so has the invisible infrastructure beneath the sidewalks and streets.
To build an elevator from the street to the station, things like electrical lines, sewage pipes, and water systems have to be diverted around the shaft. And that's just accounting for what's on the utility map. New York has hundreds of years of unmapped infrastructure underground, some of which is still in use. It takes a lot of research and planning to properly place an elevator shaft. And even then, there are always surprises once the excavation begins.
The third challenge is structure. More specifically, adding elevators and supporting equipment to a station in a way that doesn't compromise safety or convenience. When we build an elevator, we also have to build walkways, mechanical rooms, and other supporting structures to integrate it into the station.
In most cases, we have to do all of this while the station is in operation 24/7. Along with the challenges of space and subsurface, this makes for a very complicated puzzle to solve every time we want to install elevators.
Building elevators is hard, and it's traditionally taken a long time and a lot of money. With the Fast Forward plan, we're exploring every option to get them built faster and for less money, so that we can build even more.
We're also looking at other ways to make stations accessible, including ramps, because the subway is for all New Yorkers. Thanks for your patience as we tackle one of the toughest jobs in improving our transit system. We're absolutely committed to getting it done.
Cool, thank you for that. So as you know, that video is just meant to show a little bit of some of the challenges we face. Look, in terms of trying to get ready for the future, we're looking at accelerating our station designs. I mean, coordination, as you saw, about subsurface conditions with other city agencies, with other external partners is huge. We're laying the groundwork for that. We're talking to industry leaders about, you know, what are some innovative ways that they can advise us to take this work on. We're talking to other cities and seeing how they approach this challenge. we're trying to standardize our process as much as possible, although transit itself leads itself to a custom, unique environment. We're trying to find the right balance through all that. So we're happy to give a larger presentation at some point in the future as we actually embark and start doing some of our first procurements, which we hope will be in 2020. But for now, we're sending the message that we are on it, we're investigating, we're looking deeply, we're up to the challenge, and we're going to find a way. So as we move on from that, I want to talk about something that's very related, which is our Accessible Station Lab at J Street. I mean, J Street really represents our commitment, the fast forward commitment to getting new and innovative accessibility features into our future. And we are going on a historic journey to do 70 accessible stations. And the Accessible Station Lab is meant to help us make the ADA station of the future something that is more usable. It has a focus on two main things, which is getting features for implementing features for individuals across the four major categories of disability, right? Everybody always talks about vertical access and elevators, but we have three other major categories other than mobility impairments. We have those who are blind and low vision, those who are deaf or hard of hearing, those who may have cognitive or intellectual disabilities. And a lot of these features are much simpler than what you just saw in the video, but allow us to really deliver the ultimate best performing end product from an ADA station that allows the most amount of New Yorkers to have a better experience in our station. So let me take you through just some of the features that we're testing. We're testing more than this. But we just wanted to give you a little preview. Hopefully maybe in 3-4 months when we're done with this pilot project and we receive feedback, we can give the board another update in terms of which features ended up winning out. So next slide, please. So we're testing a variety of floor materials. The floor materials are really broken up into several different categories, but the two major categories are tactile flooring. Tactile flooring helps those who are blind find their way through our system. As you can imagine, it's pretty challenging if you're someone who's blind, walks down into that station or up into that station, and then you're kind of on your own trying to find walls and columns. So tactile guidance is something we really want to try to deliver on. And two is floor graphics or contrast flooring, which actually helps everybody. It helps all the users of the system find a way from station to from staircase to staircase, from platform to platform. But ultimately, the reason we are trying this feature is sometimes in a station it's very difficult to find the elevator. Right? We have had to work really hard to place it. Sometimes it's in a corner. Sometimes it's somewhere else. Often there's one elevator path and 10 or so staircases. So by having a path on the floor that helps you identify exactly where the elevator is, we hope that's helped your experience. And lastly, we also our accessible boarding area. A lot of times we have a sign that's caught up in a lot of infrastructure on the platform. Having a decal on the floor that identifies exactly where customers with disabilities should board, which is exactly where the gap is the smallest on our platform, we believe will really help the whole experience. Next slide. The flooring items that I mentioned are some of the things you can see. Now we have a group of 5 different apps, and we had many to choose from. Ultimately, these are just the first ones we're testing that help you also with wayfinding and help you with various other kinds of features. So Navalens uses kind of innovative QR code technology. It has the ability to translate a sign or any piece of direction into 18 different languages. It provides an audible format that will speak it kind of like Google would speak to your GPS navigation, and that's Navalens. We have over 100 QR codes just in J Street MetroTech. Waymap is also uses dead reckoning and kind of some innovative technology to literally guide you through the station. Just like Google drives you down the street, Waymap would tell you where you're going inside a station. Next slide. And then we have the last 3 apps, which is Magnus Cards, which helps those who have cognitive disabilities learn how to use the system. It has an animated kind of character that kind of takes you through. It's kind of a proven product from the corporate commercial world, and we're excited to see how it works in our subway system. We have Click and Go Wayfinding, which is a product that's akin to kind of how you go through a museum. You have audio recorded kind of tours. It builds in a similar structure for our system, so we'll see how that works. And last is Ira, which is an innovative app that's being tested in a couple different systems. It gives you, you call in, and it gives you a specially trained customer service agent who's looking through the back of your phone, through your camera phone, and leading you through the subway as you walk through it. Next slide. Then we have a whole array of new maps and signages. We have an interactive map that actually has tactile features and speaks to you, also for those who are blind. We've changed our Braille signage guidelines to have much more robust instructions. We've put tactile and Braille maps on our platforms. We have tactile station environment maps. Next slide. And lastly, we've changed our alternate route sign design, which you've all become familiar with, but we've added a map to it, and we're seeing how customers like the visual representation better. And lastly, on the right, you see an accessible pathway map, which actually gives you the ability to see the station as a whole and see what the accessible pathway is. A lot of times you're going from elevator to elevator, and it's hard to understand exactly where the next ones are. These signs really help you to understand your route as a whole. So that's just some of the features, and I've already taken a good amount of time. And there's even more, but we're super excited, and we really believe that all these features will really change the experience customers go through. Over the next 3 months, we encourage you all as board members, as well as the community, to come out, take a look at the features with us, give us your feedback, and that's the best way we'll know what works. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Questions? Commissioner Glucksman?
Yeah, thank you for a very interesting report. That video about the elevators, you're probably planning to put it on the website so people can see it?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
I don't know if this is for you, Alex, or for Sally or Andy, but do we currently have the geography, geometry, and subsurface strata information for those 70 stations that will be made accessible, or will that have to be done?
I can do that. Yeah, we do. I mean, we have, as you know, we've done the feasibility study, which has been a great tool, not just in selecting the stations, but in kind of accelerating us to the future of those stations. So utility plates and certain things like that have been provided, so we know some of the subsurface conditions. I'll give you 2 main points about that. I mean, we do believe that of the 70, maybe 10 to 15 will have incredibly challenging property or utility situations. And we've identified those as critical issues, and those will travel on separate paths. So it's helpful to know that. But I will say this, that even the things that are mapped in some of the feasibility studies are old. So we know that in order to really give a contractor the information they need, we're going to have to do some additional destructive and boring tests so that our contractors know exactly what they're getting into. So we're doing as much as we can to put that information out front, and we're already on that course.
I appreciate the time, Alex, that you shared with us to explain these measures. I, for one, would love to be better versed in these different types of treatments that make our system accessible for all of us, but particularly those who have disabilities. So thank you so much for that. Is there a schedule for how we might roll this out into other stations throughout the system?
There isn't a schedule yet, but we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't want to. I mean, certainly for future stations, that's kind of the easy target. We will redefine what a future station looks like. Into our existing stations is something we're going to be looking at to create a plan in 2020. We first have to figure out which features work best. And to be candid, some are relatively inexpensive, others are a little bit more costly. We also have to see how the features survive in our system. We're working very closely with our station personnel to see how they do in general. So for now, we're in the study phase. I think President Byford wouldn't be pushing us to test all these features if it wasn't the absolute goal to get them into stations. So stay tuned for that.
There are a few narratives that I think have worked internationally to our disadvantage. One was the cost per foot of doing new railway, and clearly the story of the billions that we're putting into accessibility, and then people did the division of 70 into that number, and they got whatever it was, 78 million. I think it is imperative that we explain, as this film did a terrific job doing it, but I wonder whether there's almost an editorial board tour that is necessary for the world to understand that when you say $78 million, that's not a cost of an elevator. There is a whole host of issues that flow from that. And there ought to be some understanding and sympathy that New York is different from building a brand new system. And I think we need to upfront get that story out before the international tax. Because if there's one thing that people all talk about is how much it costs to add a foot of railway, and they talk now about the cost of building an elevator, and they're often incorrect for similar reasons, but they both work terribly to our disadvantage. So I do think that we need to figure out how to get the real story out, and then of course how to then bring costs down, of whether it is building our own system to do elevators, working with companies in some type of project, since we know, one thing we know, we're going to be building plenty of elevators over the next 10 years. And how do we do that most efficiently? And I think we need to figure that out and then let the world know what we're doing.
Yeah, I brought it up some time ago, the question of station barriers, particularly at very highly overcrowded stations. Because of danger, obviously sometimes people are committing suicide, but some people are literally shoved off the platform. I know in other localities they use these kinds of things. I know it's much more difficult in our system because of the variations of different platforms. But I'm wondering if that's being explored at all.
Commissioner, it's something that ultimately we'd love to have, platform screen doors, but it is particularly challenging here because you are retrofitting an old system, and that's not to say it can't be done. Hong Kong did it, but bear in mind Hong Kong did it on a 1976 build with straight platforms and typically only one rolling stock rather than a composite rolling stock using that platform. There were also platforms built to modern standards, whereas ours probably a lot of them would not support the weight of platform screen doors. You would be looking at quite some fundamentals platform rebuilds. Putting them on curves is more difficult. So it's not to say that it can't be done. It could be done. I recognize the benefits. I've worked on systems with platform screen doors. And it's also, you are talking billions of dollars. So right now, obviously, we've got to keep platforms safe. We have means to do that. But right now, I think the greater imperative is to spend that money on resignaling the subway and on making it accessible.
I just want to assure everybody that as part of the new capital program construction implementation plan, we're taking a look at all this stuff anew. I don't accept the costing in any way. We just, in the last committee meeting, described how in the Floral Park on the third track project, we're doing 3 elevators for $5.3 million. All of the things that Alex described in that video, which I had not seen before, described, I'm sure are real, but I don't take as a given that any one station ought to cost 60, 70, 80, or any $1 million. So elevators don't cost, 3 or 4 elevators don't cost $80 million, and we have to find ways to do it cheaper, which our team is making a priority as we slowly take over this element of the capital program.
And we entirely agree with that.
Okay, anything else for Alex? Okay, let's go to Sarah Meyer with the Strategy and Customer Experience Report.
Hi, everyone. So first and foremost, just wanted to thank Andy, Patricia Imbro, and other colleagues, James Rubin, for their hard work and support while I was out on maternity leave. This month, we closed our Q3 customer commitment and launched our Q4 commitment, tangible, time-bound improvements to improve the transit system. We reconfigured 6 fare arrays to account for increased ridership, making it easier to enter and exit the system. We've upgraded many customer information screens at platform level, now showing next stop information. We opened 4 new elevators, as Alex mentioned, at New Utrecht 62nd Street DNN station. Please visit new.mta.info/customer commitment for the full list of Q3 and Q4 commitments. I'm not going to spend time reading all of them, but they're really, really exciting. Also just wanted to briefly mention our Q3 customer satisfaction survey, which was released. It marks 1 year since the launch of Customers Count. And this quarter, for the first time, we can make comparisons between customer satisfaction 1 year ago, and happy to say that year-over-year results are overwhelmingly positive. Overall service satisfaction with subway service delivery was 13.7 percentage points higher than last year. Overall service satisfaction with stations also increased. It's now at 70%, 7.3% points higher than last year. And collectively, system-wide satisfaction increased 11.8 percentage point increases. And these results form an important bridge between subway performance statistics that Sally reports every month, such as better on-time performance and fewer major incidents, and how our customers experience those system improvements. We now have quantitative evidence that our efforts have resulted in more satisfied subway customers. On the bus front, we have a little bit more to do. Satisfaction with local, limited, and express bus service has been relatively unchanged since the launch of customer count. Satisfaction with the entire bus system actually decreased by 2.2 percentage points and is now at 49.3%. Since Q3 2018, satisfaction did increase by 6.6 percentage points, so we did see some increases this year. But bottom line, as Craig discussed today, we have to get our buses moving through the city faster through the city streets if we want our satisfaction numbers to improve. Few attributes did improve that we have control over. Satisfaction with fares, fare payment, onboard cleanliness, onboard temperature, security from crime, both on buses and at bus stops. I also just wanted to briefly mention that this Sunday, October 27th, marks our first annual Subway Day. It's the 115th birthday of the subway, and so we'll have photo displays along the original IRT line that are unique to each station and show vintage photographs from the early 1900s. So please take your families and check them out. It should be fun. From noon to 4, we'll be running vintage low-V trains along the 2-3 lines express from 42nd Street Times Square to 96th Street and back. Also, the Transit Museum will be open an hour earlier, so please check us out and take a ride. See you soon. Thanks.
Thanks. Any questions for Sarah? Okay, let's go to Robert Deal with the safety report.
All right, good morning, everybody. Just want to bring up some highlights from the safety report. Subway customer accident rate is slightly up, but while slip, trips, and falls remain our largest category, we have seen a 1.6% decrease in this type of accident. We've also seen increases in bus collision, collision injury, and customer action rates. To address these, the Bus Safety and Training Unit has recently delivered their forward planning and bus designated lane safety poster to all bus depots. They're also working with corporate communications on a safety awareness campaign called Fall Challenges, which includes posters and trifold safety literature. This campaign is intended to inform bus operators about the hazards that occur daily in segregated bus lanes and the proper procedures to forward plan potential hazards, including slip, trips, and falls. This information is also being integrated into the Shopgate safety training talks and compliance training. Employee lost time accident rate has also increased. Analyzing the data shows that our largest category is, again, slip, trips, and falls and overexertions. These categories account for about 39% of all MTA bus and New York City Transit lost time accidents. The Office of System Safety is continuing to work with the operating departments to enhance root cause reporting details in order to reduce these type of accidents in the future. New York City Transit also continues to make progress against all of our leading indicator goals. And lastly, Department of Subways is continuing to make strides in decreasing the number of fires, which are down about 26.5%. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Questions for Robert?
Sarah.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Schwartz.
It's okay. On slips, trips, and falls, are there certain locations or stations that where you either have the predominant number of slips, trips, and falls? Is it weather related? Does weather trigger an increase in slip, trips, and falls? Are there certain locations within the overall system that need to be targeted? Is it just across the board and there's no...
It is across the boards with slip, trips, and falls. There's nothing really definitive as far as saying this area. If we were to find an area where it is constant, of course, there would be more pressure applied to it to try to alleviate it. But at this point, there's no correlation between any one certain area. You know, there's 25 stations that are considered our top stations to look at. So we're always mindful of those issues.
And you know what the causes of those slip, trips, and falls are, like at those stations?
They're various. I could give you a breakdown as far as what they are, as far as what the slip, trip, and fall can be.
I'm just trying to think
Yeah.
whether or not we need to do something, change the flow. I mean, I don't know. I just don't know if you have a predominance of slip, trips, and falls, which could end up in lawsuits or whatever, if it's a.
I will tell you one
there's
thing.
certain things that we've identified that we can address that to try to reduce the number.
We can take a look at that. I will tell you one thing. Amazingly, it's when bad weather occurs, we actually find less. And I think that's just because people are more mindful as they're walking. They're actually maybe paying attention as opposed to a sunny day where they're just walking and maybe not. Maybe they're looking at their phone.
Yes, to follow up on Commissioner Schwartz,
Sure.
there are some stations where, when there's heavy rain or even moderate rain, stations habitually flood.
Yes.
So when it gets colder, they're going to habitually freeze.
Yes.
And
There's possibility with that, yes.
so are you looking at places that have a lot of
Yes, on a
standing water?
on a seasonal basis, we do.
Thanks.
Sorry, we add to that to give you reassurance. We do track all of that stuff, and if there's ever bad weather coming, whether that be snow, ice, flooding, because you know your hot spots, we take additional precautions to tackle those. So we would be very careful, for example, where for whatever reason, if water comes in, we would have additional personnel. And just picking up on what Bobby said, where there are clusters on stations, we have done things like run campaigns, put up additional signage, try to get people not to run, in some cases staggered fencing, so that if you can't run straight out of platform, you have to go around a little chicane. So we are very alive to this. We do track clusters, both for employee and for customer accidents.
As someone who went flying down a flight of stairs at Grand Armory Plaza under a sign that says "Do not rush for a train," and I rushed for a train and broke a wrist, it seems to me that the idea of a root cause analysis of which of the stations and what are the times would be tremendously useful, and then education. And I'm wondering whether or not maybe even as trains become more and more certain of arriving on time, whether that may have an impact of people not dashing down the stairs in the same way they used to. But I do think that there is an educational process. I must admit, I finally learned after all these years, I don't run down the stairs anymore when a train is coming in. But part of it is on the assumption that another train will be there pretty soon. So I do think we need to figure out where the stations, what's the type of signage that works in terms of slowing people down to not do the stupid things that I've done over the years. Yeah.
Commissioner, we do that.
We do.
And I think to your point that I think there's a definite correlation. If the service is getting better, so it's relentless and it's going to keep coming, you will be in less of a rush to not only run at a train, which is never a bad idea, but to stick your foot in the door, which is definitely not a good idea, or to hold the doors, because we just want to get people into this mindset that things are improving. The clock beat reliability of the service is improving. So no need to rush. Another train will be along very shortly.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Chief Delatorre.
Good morning, everybody. For the month of September, there were 19 additional major crimes in transit, with 230 incidents versus 211 during September of last year. Year-to-date, overall transit crime is down 1.4%, with 25 fewer major felonies for the year. As of the end of September, there were 39 additional robberies year-to-date. Felony assaults were even, and there were 66 fewer grand larcenies. While we experienced an uptick in robberies during the month, we've undertaken a detailed and ongoing analysis of the issue, responded with changes in our deployments, and we're confident we will reverse any trend here. Year-to-date, 39% of our total major felonies during the month of September occurred in Manhattan, 30% in Brooklyn, 20% in the Bronx, 11% in Queens. As you know, our comprehensive network of security cameras throughout the subway allow us to obtain key video evidence, in many cases, sometimes pushing video of suspects out to our offices in real time, and often just minutes after the crime. This was the case this past Thursday at about 2 a.m. when members of the Manhattan Task Force reviewed video of a grand larceny that occurred moments before at the 42nd Street and 8th Avenue station. Our team reviewed the video. They obtained footage of the suspect fleeing the system. They then canvassed a live feed for the suspect and saw him, via video, walking on a platform after returning to the same station. Officers responded to the location and arrested 37-year-old Cesar Compress, charging him with grand larceny. Compress has 7 prior arrests, including menacing a police officer and sex abuse. Finally, we're seeking the public's help in identifying the suspects in a video posted online that depicts them damaging the window of a subway car. Most of you probably have seen this already. We released video and still images of the suspects, and our Transit Bureau Special Projects Unit and Manhattan Robbery Task Force are currently working on the case. We have received several valuable tips so far, and we hope to have arrests in the case in the coming days. We're not going to tolerate disorder and vandalism to the subway system that we collectively work so hard to keep safe and clean, and it's apparent from many anonymous tips we've already received in this case that our subway riders aren't going to tolerate it either. With that, I thank you, and I welcome any questions or suggestions you may have.
Commissioner Lacewell?
Yes, thank you. Could you please address the rape statistics, if I'm reading this correctly? 3 this year, none last year. Have there been any arrests? And do you have any insights, for example, as some of the other board members asked, is this something about particular areas of stations, or what kind of conditions, if any, were at issue?
Okay, I believe we have arrests on 2 of the cases so far, and the Special Victims Squad would have to brief us further on the investigation. There's no trend here, no pattern, and beyond that, I probably cannot comment.
Where did the instances occur?
Okay, so one was an attempt. It occurred on January 17th at about 01:15 hours at Atlantic Avenue on a 4 line. The other was a case that took place on May 28th at 03:40 hours in the morning on the West 4th Street station. And the last one was on September 29th at 00:30 hours, which took place on the 86th Street station. '86th Street, it was in TD1, 2-4 precinct, so it was on the west side.
Okay, so every month we talk about these crime statistics, and people read into the numbers sort of what they want to see. Crime is down. The way I always view it, it appears to me that some crime is down. Other major instances, grand larcenies, robberies, assaults are up. And so it just, I think, is important that we keep an eye on this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this specifically, on the rape instances specifically. But to be clear, that is not a sexual assault. That is the most significant crime in that category that we can talk about, and they occurred in our stations, right, or on our trains.
Yes.
So, we are trying to get our arms around this issue generally. Criminal recidivisms, robberies, groping, sexual assault. These are like the most serious crimes that can happen in that category, and they're happening on our property. So we have to sort of get our arms around it. I don't know if a public setting while cameras are rolling is the best place for us to have specific conversation about instances of rape without, I don't want to get to a place where we could potentially be violating anyone's privacy or providing information that a victim wouldn't be comfortable with. So, but this is something we have to continue to focus on. We've talked about it every month for months. And there's a lot of public debate about, do we need additional police officers in the system? Do we not? Why is there such a focus on fare evasion? We have the same conversation month after month. We need more police officers in the system. We have to keep the system safe and secure, both from outside threats and from people who are just attempting to ride the system, to use the system as customers, who should not be subject ever to feeling uncomfortable or being subjected to criminal behavior. Additionally, we have a fare evasion effort underway. We're not talking about 500 new cops for fare evasion. We're talking about adding a number of cops to address all of these issues we have in our system. So I had the same reaction you did, Commissioner Lacewell. I looked at those numbers and I felt sick to my stomach. And we have to keep doing more to address it. Commissioner Lacewell, did I cut you off? Did you have additional comments?
No, that's fine. I concur with what you said. I understand, especially with law enforcement matters underway and so forth, but, and I take it from what you're saying, that those discussions are happening behind the scenes about how we can help prevent in the future, especially because, as you know, this is an underreported category, so even seeing any numbers when it was zero last year is, of course, very concerning. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to comment a little further. Any rape, any sexual assault, as you know, we've been waving the banner on this since I arrived in the Transit Bureau, if not long before that, is too many. We undertake many different types of initiatives that we don't speak about here, including cameras, camera reviews, waking up passengers to the tune of over 100,000 passengers this year have been woken up in the system to help share that responsibility and help us protect themselves by them being aware of their surroundings. In addition to that, you'll see that, we're almost a victim of our crime being so low, because since it is so low, if there's a slight ebb or flow in it, as like we witnessed with our robberies, for instance, our robberies were up 39 for the month of September for the entire year, not the month alone, for the year. But then last week, we had 4 robberies compared to 18 last year. So those numbers go up and down. As people come in the system and commit crimes, we arrest them, and as we arrest them, we see the crime go down again. Our sex offenders is probably our best example of people coming back over and over. We arrest them, crime goes down for a while. As soon as they make bail or they're released from jail, we start to see an increase in sex offenders. We start following through the system week after week after week until we catch them live offending another victim. So this is something that we constantly have to deal with. Our officers are incredibly good at dealing with it, but some of these recidivist offenders are becoming very good at evading us as well. So we have to stay on top of them, and it goes to our mutual push towards excluding some of these recidivist offenders. I think it's going to help us achieve better lows in crime over the next year and coming years once we finally get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Schwartz?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would ask that you consider at some point calling a meeting to talk about cameras in general in our subway stations. To echo what President Byford said at the beginning of our committee meeting, the 2024 capital plan program is a great capital program, and I supported that. But when I took the time to kind of read through the section regarding adding additional funding for security cameras, something that you've talked about in the past, dealing with criminal recidivism, I've talked about it, other board members have talked about it, to not only increase safety, but prevent incidents by preventing people from throwing stuff on the tracks that could result in a derailment. So it's the safety of the workers in the system, it's the safety of the passengers in the system. It's very hard, it gets very confusing from my perspective and hard to follow whether we have adequate funding in the capital program. I'll just give you some examples, and not to belabor this here in a committee meeting, and maybe for security reasons we want to talk it offline, but when I read the material, we have things called personal identification cameras versus situational awareness cameras. I'm not really sure I understand the difference. I don't know why we have a difference. I don't know why there's, with technology today, why one camera can't do all things. we have a lot of cameras that, from a technological standpoint, are probably outdated and old, and maybe need to be replaced, as well as new ones being added. The majority of our cameras were installed after 9/11. That was focused on terrorism, not focused on general public safety and other kind of day-to-day issues. Some of the cameras are based on a real-time basis. Some are locally controlled, so when law enforcement or somebody wants the video, you have to send someone to get the video. There were 53,000 requests. When you think about the number of what it costs the agency just in manpower, labor costs to go and retrieve the data, bring the data, I just think we need to have more of a global conversation in a coordinated way. How many cameras we need, where do we need to put them, not just for fare evasion, but for overall general public safety of the system, and what the various sources of money are available out there to pay for all this. And so there needs to be the input of law enforcement, there needs to be the input of our technology experts, there needs to be input from our operational experts, but I'm just not comfortable that when I looked at the capital program that we're going to see the kind of improvements we're all seeking and looking for in the shortest period of time possible. And I think it would be beneficial if you would call possibly a meeting so we can kind of ask a lot of questions, kind of talk through these issues, and see if we need at some point to amend the capital program down the road, or work with other stakeholders to find funding sources to kind of fast track or fast forward cameras in the station. Because I think it's an important element to be able to see what's going on. Even though we're hiring more cops, and we're trying to create more of a police presence, we're a 24/7 operation. They can't be there all the time. They can't be everywhere. And those cameras can help become a deterrent and an effective law enforcement tool in dealing with criminal or public safety type issues. Thanks.
Appreciate that. Yes, Commissioner Lynn.
So here is the concern that I have, that we have a number of problems that we've been discussing for months. Fare evasion, safety, homeless, all terribly important. What I haven't heard is a good conversation about if you were to spend what is going to be $100 million a year at least of the cost of 570 at least officers coming into the system. And I think we'll talk about that during finance, but it easily gets to well over that. These are the highest users of overtime of anyone in the system. That these types of costs, the question is, what is the best and most efficient and effective use of those dollars? You have 35,000 NYPD officers, and you have a 911 system. I don't know how, what is the impact? We heard a blood-chilling story, I think, of one of the public commenters last month of a subway worker who described having someone on the train with them and not being able to get any help. Whether that can be handled with the addition of some police officers, it seems to me it's much more likely would be handled with a 911 system that could say, we need people at certain location right away. I don't know. I'm certainly in favor of having a conversation where we can ask these issues and we can figure out. What I've been saying since I got here, though, is we have a series of problems. The question is, what is the most effective way of handling those problems? I don't know that we've come upon the best way, but I certainly think that it's data that should drive those decisions, and the type of issues of where these incidents are occurring, how they're occurring, what time Does adding a certain number of personnel, is that the best way? Are cameras a better way? Are cameras and personnel? Is use of 911? All of these issues are things we need to consider, and we need to make sure in the scarce resources we have that we're using dollars as effectively as possible. I worry that we're not.
Anyone else want to jump in on this? Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Let's go to the finance report. Jay Patel.
Thank you, Chair. Total year-to-date ridership for September 2019 of 1.7 billion was 20.5 million, or 1.2% above forecast. Average weekday ridership for September 2019 was 7.7 million, which was 3.8% above September 2018. Average weekday ridership for the 12 months ending September 2019 was 7.3, or 0.6% lower than the 12 months ending September 2018. September 2019 year-to-date fare box revenue was $3.4 billion, which was 41.2 million above forecast. Non-reimbursable expenses for September year-to-date exceeded forecast by $91 million, of which the labor was over forecast by $101.6 million. This 34 million of that was due to a payroll procedure change that we had in August, which will be reversed in October. The remaining unfavorable labor variance of $68 million was mainly due to overruns in miscellaneous pay, stemming from higher workers' compensation, terminal leave payouts, overtime, mainly due to higher service support and maintenance expense, and other fringe benefits. On the MTA bus side, average weekday ridership for the 12 months ending September 2019 was 0.8% lower than September 2018. Fare box revenue was 167 million, or 1.8 million above budget. And year-to-date operating expenses were below budget by 16.2 million due to favorable timing of non-labor expenses. That concludes my report.
While the chair's busy, Commissioner Vanderpool.
Thank you. Jay, there's a note on the report on page 123 about paratransit expenses being underrun by 7 million. Would you just explain what that means, please?
Sure. I believe that's in the non-labor feature because let me get back to you on that for sure.
Anything else for Jay?
Oh.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Jay. Let's go to Alok Saha for capital program status report.
Morning. In September, the 8 projects were awarded totaling $79 million. These include the station component projects in Staten Island for the 6 stations, and the 2 track and switch replacement projects, one on Jaron and the Culver line. And also include a flood mitigation projects, the resiliency projects, that is on Jericho Central Maintenance Facility in Bronx. Also in September, 9 projects were completed, totaling $147 million. This include the tunnel lighting projects at QBL between 36 and Roosevelt Avenue, and the delivery and acceptance of 20 R179 cars for B Division, totaling $50 million. One more information, also in 2019, the partnership with the Outfront Media, we have completed installation of the customer information screen and the advertising screen at 103 stations. Our goal is 2019 is 120. That concludes this CPM report.
Thank you. Any questions? Yep.
So how many of the R179s do we now have in service? And how are they coming at 20 a month? Is that the average, or?
We have 278 on the property. Not all 278 are in service at this point. I'm not exactly sure, but yes, as we get them on, we commission them, we test them, and we put them into service. So we have 278 on property.
Are the monthly statistics we get reflecting the car breakdowns, reflecting the removal of R32s as more 179s come in?
So the monthly statistics that you see for MDBF are based on the total revenue miles that are run by the fleet. So as we use the R32s less and less, they have fewer revenue miles and fewer opportunities for failure, but it's essentially accounted for in the numerator and the denominator on the R32 fleet.
I see. Thank you.
Commissioner Glucksman?
So we retiring the 32s ahead of the 42s.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any other final questions on the President's report as a whole? Okay, let's turn to Steve Plataki for the procurement package.
Good afternoon. The procurement package, which presents New York City Transit and MTA bus procurements, includes 8 actions totaling $249 million in expenditures. I'd like to highlight 4 procurement actions included in this month's agenda. The first 2 actions are express bus procurements that were conducted as one solicitation in order to realize efficiencies as well as consider economies of scale. This solicitation was conducted utilizing a competitive negotiated RFP process, prior to which an extensive outreach to the manufacturing bus industry was performed. The first bus procurement is a federally funded award for 257 over-the-road express diesel buses to Prevost Car US Incorporated in the estimated amount of approximately $151 million to replace aging buses in the Bronx, Queens, and Yonkers for the MTA bus company fleet. The second bus procurement is a locally funded award of 50 over-the-road diesel buses with an option for up to 23 additional buses, also to Prevost, in the estimated amount of $43.7 million, including the options. The 50 buses will replace aging buses for the New York City Transit fleet operating out of the Staten Island area, while the option for the 23 additional buses has been included in the event that New York City Transit takes over 2 Staten Island express bus routes currently operated by the city. In both actions, the selection committee unanimously recommended award to Prevost due to its substantially lower price, better delivery schedule, higher technical evaluation, and in regard to the locally funded procurement, due to its significantly higher New York State content. Prevost pricing under both contracts was considered to be fair and reasonable based on the competitive nature of the procurement, as well as a favorable comparison to the estimate. The next actions I'd like to highlight are the ratifications of 2 contracts made under a declaration of an immediate operating need to purchase communication-based train control car-borne equipment for New York City Transit's R179 and R211 subway fleet that will operate on the 8th Avenue line. These awards are to Siemens Mobility Incorporated in the amount of approximately $20.7 million for the R179 fleet, and Thales Transport Security Incorporated in the amount of approximately $23.3 million for the R211 subway car fleet. I'll just recap quickly. In January 2019, while the procurement was underway, an immediate operating need was declared by Capital Program Management at their request in order to further expedite the award of these contracts. The reason behind that was that the Kawasaki, the R211 car manufacturer, had reached a critical point in its accelerated subway car design where they needed critical input from the CBTC supplier in order to, 1, maintain their schedule and actually complete their design. This contract happens to be the first car contract, where we're actually getting the car manufacturer to incorporate the CBTC equipment before they actually deliver it, which will help our commissioning process. At the conclusion of negotiations, Siemens and Thales submitted best and final offers, and after consideration of the technical and price proposals for the base and all options, the selection committee unanimously determined that the optimal award strategy and best value was to split the award, recommending Siemens for the R179 requirements and Thales for the R211 requirements. The split award strategy facilitated a number of things, one of which it mitigated the potential delays on the 8th Avenue by separating the awards and allowing Thales to focus on the R211 critical delivery schedule, which was in advance of the R179, as well as allowing Siemens to focus on the R179 contract. The pricing for both of the proposers is considered to be fair and reasonable based on the competitive nature and pricing received, as well as a favorable comparison to the estimates. I request the committee's approval of all items in the procurement agenda, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, is there a motion to move the procurement package, and then we'll take questions? Motion? Okay. Questions? Commissioner Vanderpool.
For the Prevost $43.6 million contract, there's a note that says there's an inventory of unique parts associated with this fleet. Can you explain that a little bit? And also, can you, Steve, please explain what makes an over-the-road bus?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, the unique part is each time we get a new bus fleet in, we meet with the folks in maintenance as well as in the depot areas to determine what material they need in order to maintain the product. And in some instances, the bus model changes from one design in 1 year, product upgrades, as well as some of the new equipment that we're putting on the bus. So that's where the differences in inventory is. Our footprint changes. We try, however, to minimize that change and that migration so that we can also control our inventory footprint. All right. The second question was, the over-the-road. It's a term. It's an express bus, but we call it over-the-road. It's a 45-foot bus in comparison to our 40 or 60-foot buses, and they're typically built with a different type of construction. It's a different interior. It's a more comfortable ride in terms of the seats, the high-back seats, and it just separates it from the rest of the fleet that we have.
Makes no sense to me whatsoever. Commissioner Albert.
So in the Siemens Thales issue that you brought up, you're retrofitting the 179s with the CBTC. In the case of the 211s, you're installing them as they're being built.
Yes. I would say, I don't know that we're retrofitting them. I think we're just putting it in. We're not taking anything out of the R179. They came CBTC ready,
yes.
Already plumbed and piped in terms of receiving it, so it makes the installation a little easier. We're not taking off panels and all.
Right.
So we contemplated that. But the Kawasaki, the R211, envisioned that the car builder for the first time would be given the equipment from a procurement that we conducted, this procurement, and they'd install it. They'd test it at their facility, and then we'd have it over here. So the commissioning, in terms of when we test the equipment, would occur at the contractors as well as here.
And in the case of the 179s, do you have to take any cars out of service to do what you're going to do?
Yes, you'll have to take them out in terms of making sure the equipment is
And
incorporated
approximately
and
how
tested.
long do they get taken out for this operation?
I'd have to get back to you on that, and I will.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vanderpool.
Two more questions, please. On the Global Contact Services contract, what triggered the state comptroller to actually review this contract? And then, I'll let you answer and ask this.
That's a great question. I suspect it happens, maybe it has to do around a lot of the activity that occurred here at committee and board in terms of folks' interest in that particular contract. It's the call center contract, but we don't get an explanation of why, just that they want to review it and before it's approved, before we award it.
Thank you. And then my last question is on Halmar. So one of the justifications for this modification was, as stated, to minimize the inconvenience to our passengers, which I assume is always the priority for a lot of these projects. So why would this have been noted as such? Why, in other words, why didn't we anticipate?
I got it.
Thank you.
I think what you're seeing, and I think Jano mentioned it earlier, we're seeing a grander coordination of contracts in that particular area, in that facility. And as they went through the contracts, there was several opportunities to revisit how work was laid out. And in this particular instance, I think they noticed an opportunity here to resequence the work and ensure that there was a mitigation of the impact on the riding public. That activity ends up saving about 6 months. And again, it's less impact for our ridership. And I think you're going to see that as a continued focus on all the projects that we award and coordinate.
Anything else for Steve? Okay. Let's see. Is there a motion to move the procurement package? We did that. Okay, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Now we need a motion on the proposed action to adopt the finding statement for the MTA New York City Transit reconstruction and expansion of the Jamaica Bus Depot. Is there a motion? Second. All in favor? Thank you. Transit has completed a final, my apologies. Well, the script says, excuse me. Okay, let's go to the standard reports.
Okay, Chair and Committee, in addition to the MetroCard report, this month's book also includes the quarterly customer satisfaction report, which Sarah talked about, and the customer account survey, and they can be found towards the back of the book. And in terms of outstanding follow-up reports, Chair Feinberg, we're up to date.
Great. Any final questions or comments? For the good of the order. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion. Second. We are adjourned.